The crystal data core pulsed with a soft blue light as Dr. Hyun-Soo's gloved hands carefully lifted it from the ancient pedestal. 3 years of digging through the radioactive ruins of Kepler 442b had led to this moment. The dead world had once been home to the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known, and now their secrets lay scattered in crystalline fragments across a tomb-like chamber. "Careful with that one," Mireille called out, her forearms dancing across multiple holographic displays simultaneously. As a Zephyrian, she could process data streams that would overwhelm most species, but even she seemed troubled by what they were uncovering. "The energy readings are off the charts. This core contains more information than we've found in the past 6 months combined." The translation matrix hummed to life as Mireille fed the crystal's data into the quantum decoder. Ancient. Symbols flowed across the screens like water, slowly reorganizing into comprehensible text. Her secondary arms never stopped working, while her primary hands guided the translation algorithms. "Another fragment decoded," she announced, though her voice carried an edge of concern. The chamber fell silent, except for the distant hum of their atmospheric processors. "It mentioned something called Project Genesis and—" She paused, her scaled features contorting with confusion. "Biological weapons." Hyun-Soo felt his blood chill. His scaled features, common among his species, darkened to a deep emerald, a sign of distress that Mireille recognized immediately. They had been studying architect ruins for decades across 17 different worlds. Every discovery pointed to the same conclusion. The architects had been the galaxy's most peaceful civilization, renowned throughout known space for their philosophy of absolute harmony. "That's impossible," Hyun-Soo muttered, moving closer to examine the translation. "The architects never even developed military technology. Their entire society was built around avoiding conflict. They mediated disputes between warring species for over 10,000 years. Mireille's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous habit from her homeworld. "The data doesn't lie, Doctor. Look at this section." She highlighted a portion of text that made Hyun-Soo's heart skip a beat. "They're talking about genetic manipulation on a massive scale, combining traits from dozens of different species to create something they called their children of war." The archaeological team had grown quiet. Even their robotic assistants seemed to sense the tension as they continued their systematic cataloging of artifacts. Dr. Hyun-Soo walked to the chamber's massive viewing window, staring out at the planet's scarred surface. Whatever had happened here millions of years ago had left the entire world lifeless. "Run a deep scan on that core," he ordered. "I want to know everything it contains. If the architects really created biological weapons, we need to understand why." Light years away from the dead world, Admiral Tae-hyun was having what he would later describe as the worst day of his career. The bridge of the Federation flagship Concordia buzzed with activity as reports streamed in from across the sector. His species, the Molari, were known for their calm demeanor, but his tentacles had been writhing with anxiety for the past hour. The latest addition to galactic politics had everyone on edge. Humans, a species that had seemingly appeared from nowhere, were making waves throughout known space. Their homeworld, Earth, orbited an unremarkable yellow star they called Sol, and until recently they had been considered a minor curiosity by the Federation's xenobiologists. That assessment had changed dramatically in the past 6 months. "Admiral," came the sharp voice of his communications officer. "Urgent transmission from Captain Yoon-ji's battle group." Tae-hyun's tentacles coiled tighter around his command chair. Captain Yoon-ji commanded one of the Federation's most advanced reconnaissance fleets, currently monitoring the border dispute between humans and the aggressive Vorton Empire. The Vortons were no pushovers. They had conquered 3 star systems in the past decade and possessed military technology that could challenge even Federation forces. "Put her through," Tae-hyun commanded. Captain Yoon-ji's holographic image materialized above the bridge's central display. Her usually composed features showed signs of stress, and her uniform bore the telltale signs of rapid deployment. Behind her, Tae-hyun could see the bridge of her ship bustling with activity. "Sir," she began without preamble, The humans have engaged the Vorthan fleet. The battle lasted 12 minutes. Taehyun felt his world shift. 12 minutes? His tentacles writhed in disbelief, creating ripples across his command chair's surface. Captain, the Vorthans deployed a full battle group, 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. The humans only had a small expeditionary force. 22 ships, sir, Yunji confirmed. Most of them smaller than Vorthan cruisers. But Admiral, what they did out there... She paused, seemingly struggling to find the right words. They didn't fight like any species we've encountered. The bridge fell silent. Every officer present had studied military tactics from hundreds of different civilizations. The Federation's databases contained strategic analyses of conflicts spanning millennia, but humans were rewriting the rulebook. Explain, Taehyun ordered. They used some kind of coordinated strike pattern we've never seen before, Yunji continued. They called it wolfpack tactics. Instead of engaging in traditional formation combat, they broke into small groups and attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously. The Vorthans couldn't adapt fast enough. Taehyun's tactical officer, A.E., sharp-minded Kelvani named Yunseo, leaned forward. Coordinated strikes aren't unusual, Captain. The hegemony uses similar tactics. No, Commander, you don't understand, Yunji replied. These weren't just coordinated strikes. Every human ship seemed to know exactly what the others would do before they did it. They moved like they shared a collective mind, but our scans confirmed they're individuals. And there's something else. The pause stretched uncomfortably long. Sir, Yunji finally continued, they didn't just win. They seemed to enjoy it. After the battle, we intercepted their communications. They were laughing, celebrating, congratulating each other on good kills. It was like they had just finished playing a game instead of fighting for their lives. Admiral Taehyun felt a chill run through his body that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered a species that found genuine pleasure in combat. Most civilizations fought when necessary, but they treated it as a grim duty. Send me all the battle recordings, he ordered. And Captain, maintain your observation position. Something tells me we're going to need to understand these humans. Very quickly. As the transmission ended, Taehyun stared at the star charts displaying human space. What kind of species had the galaxy just encountered? The excavation robots had been drilling for 6 hours straight. When they finally broke through to the chamber, that would change everything. Jin Woo, the expedition's military historian, was the first to descend into the newly opened vault. His headlamp cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in crystalline matrices that still pulsed with faint energy after millions of years. Dr. Hyun-soo, you need to get down here immediately. Jinwoo's voice crackled through the comm system. What we found, it's not just records. It's a complete archive of their final years. Within minutes, the entire team had gathered in the chamber. The walls seemed alive with stored information, each crystal formation containing terabytes of data. Mirai immediately began interfacing with the quantum translation systems, her forearms working at inhuman speed to process the flood of information. The power source is still active, she reported, her voice filled with awe. These crystals have been maintaining themselves for over 3 million years. The architects built this place to last forever. Jin Woo activated his portable holographic projector and began feeding it data from the nearest crystal formation. The chamber filled with ghostly blue light as ancient images materialized before them. What they saw made everyone step back in shock. Massive organic ships, each one the size of a small moon, were systematically destroying entire solar systems. These weren't mechanical constructs or energy beings. They were living creatures of unimaginable size and hunger. Their dark forms seemed to absorb light itself as they fed on planets, stars, and everything in between. They were running, Jin Woo whispered to Hyun-soo, his voice barely audible above the hum of the recording equipment. The architects, they were fleeing something called the Devourers. The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be an emergency council session. Dozens of different alien species filled a massive amphitheater, their faces united in terror despite their vastly different appearances. The architect leadership beings of pure energy housed in crystalline bodies, floated at the center of the gathering. Translation complete for this segment, Mireille announced. They're discussing evacuation plans for the entire galactic core, over 14 billion individuals across 47 worlds. But as the recording continued, it became clear that evacuation wasn't an option. The Devourers moved faster than any known technology could travel. They consumed space itself, creating expanding voids where entire star systems had once existed. The architect fleets were being systematically hunted down and destroyed. Look at the tactical displays. Jinwoo pointed to holographic star charts that showed the progression of the Devourer advance. They're not just random destroyers. They're intelligent. They're cutting off escape routes, herding the architect fleets into kill zones. The recording shifted again, now showing a secret laboratory hidden deep within an asteroid field. Hundreds of architect scientists worked frantically on what appeared to be genetic manipulation equipment. The scale of the operation was staggering. They were analyzing biological samples from thousands of different species across the galaxy. DNA sequencing on an industrial scale, Dr. Hyun-Soo observed, his scaled features reflecting the blue light of the hologram. But why? The architects never showed interest in biological warfare. The answer came from the next sequence of recordings. The architect leadership had made an impossible choice. If they couldn't outrun or outfight the Devourers, they would create something that could. A species engineered specifically for war. "Look at this," Mireille called out, her forearms trembling as she processed the data streams. Her voice carried a note of horror that made everyone turn toward her station. They combined genetic material from hundreds of different worlds. The pack-hunting instincts of the Saurian alphas from the Rigel system, the strategic thinking capabilities of the Cerebral Collective from Andromeda, the combat reflexes of the Predator clans from the Outer Rim. The holographic display showed the genetic engineering process in terrifying detail. The architects had identified the most effective killing traits from across known space and were systematically combining them into a single species. But the recordings revealed something even more disturbing. They added something else, Mireille continued, her secondary arms pulling up additional data streams. Something called combat euphoria. The subjects wouldn't just be capable of warfare, they would actually find joy in conflict. They would crave it. Jinwoo studied the genetic modification charts with growing horror. This isn't just creating soldiers. They're programming an entire species to love war itself. The laboratory recordings showed the first successful experiments. Small groups of the newly created beings were placed in combat simulations against various alien species. The results were devastating. Not only did they win every engagement, but they improved with each battle, learning and adapting at an incredible rate. Observe the psychological profiles, one of the architect scientists noted in the recording. They display no fear, no hesitation, and most remarkably, no guilt. Combat stress, which affects all known species, actually energizes them. They become more effective the longer they fight. The recordings showed months of testing and refinement. The architects continuously improved their creation, adding new capabilities and removing any traits that might make them hesitant to engage in warfare. They were building the perfect weapon against the Devourers, but time was running out. The final recordings showed the Devourer fleets approaching the architect homeworld. In desperation, the scientists loaded their genetic masterpiece into specially designed seed ships and launched them toward a distant yellow star they had identified as suitable for the species' development. The last recording was the most chilling. A single architect scientist, his crystalline form flickering with failing energy, spoke directly to the recording device. "We have seeded them on the third planet of a yellow star in the outer spiral arm." His translated voice echoed through the chamber. "The world shows signs of primitive life, but our calculations indicate optimal conditions for species development. We have given them everything they need to survive and thrive: aggression, intelligence, adaptability, and most importantly, the drive to seek out and destroy threats to their existence." The scientist paused, his form dimming further. "May the cosmos forgive us for what we have created. We have birthed a species that will know no peace. that will find meaning only in conflict. But when the Devourers return, as they surely will, our children of war will be ready. The recording ended abruptly, leaving the archaeological team in stunned silence. Jinwoo was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. The third planet of a yellow star, the genetic modifications, the timeline matches perfectly. Dr. Hyun-soo felt his blood turn cold as the implications became clear. They're talking about Earth. They're talking about humans. Mary's forearms had stopped working entirely. We need to contact the Federation immediately. If this is true, then humanity isn't just another species requesting membership. They're living weapons designed to fight an enemy that destroyed the most advanced civilization in galactic history. The chamber fell silent again as everyone processed the magnitude of their discovery. Somewhere in the galaxy, the descendants of the architect's desperate experiment were expanding their territory, displaying exactly the traits their creators had programmed into them millions of years ago. And if the recordings were accurate, the Devourers were still out there, waiting in the dark spaces between galaxies. The Federation Council chambers had never seen chaos like this. Representatives from 47 different worlds filled the massive amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of alien languages as translation systems struggled to keep up. At the center of it all, Dr. Hyun-soo stood before the holographic display, his scaled hands trembling as he presented the most terrifying discovery in galactic history. "The evidence is undeniable," he announced, his voice carrying across the chamber through the universal translators. "The architect records are complete and verified. Humanity was created as a biological weapon." The human delegation sat in the observer section, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Ambassador Dong-min, a seasoned diplomat who had negotiated humanity's entry into galactic society, stared at the holographic DNA sequences floating above the chamber floor. His aide, a young woman named Hye-jin, gripped her datapad so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "This is impossible," she whispered to Dong-min. "We evolved naturally on Earth. We have fossil records, evolutionary evidence, but even as—" She spoke. The pieces were falling into place. The aggressive nature that had driven humanity to conquer their homeworld, the way they found competition and conflict exciting rather than terrifying, their ability to adapt to any environment and overcome seemingly impossible odds. Counselor So Young, a tall crystalline being from the Vega system, rose from her seat. Her species communicated through color changes in their translucent bodies, and right now she was pulsing deep red, the color of extreme alarm. "Every war, every conflict in human history," she addressed the assembly, her words causing ripples of fear throughout the chamber, "was the result of genetic programming. They are living weapons, designed by the architects to be the ultimate destroyers." The holographic display shifted, showing historical footage that Federation observers had been collecting since first contact with humanity. The images were devastating in their implications. Ancient human civilizations locked in constant warfare. Medieval knights charging into battle with expressions of fierce joy. Modern soldiers displaying tactical brilliance that had never been seen in any other species. Defense Minister Chang Ho, an insectoid being whose species had been studying human military tactics for months, activated his own holographic projector. "Look at their history," he clicked, his mandibles creating sharp sounds that the translators rendered into galactic standard. "World War II alone, 60 million casualties. They fought on multiple continents simultaneously, developing new weapons and strategies at an unprecedented pace." The display showed footage from human conflicts across the centuries. Medieval battles where warriors seemed to revel in combat. The systematic precision of Roman legions. The guerrilla tactics of Vietnam that had revolutionized warfare theory. Throughout the galaxy, and it's not just warfare, Chang Ho continued. Their sports, their entertainment, their entire culture revolves around simulated combat. Boxing, martial arts, team competitions where they battle for territory and dominance. They've turned conflict into recreation. Ambassador Dong-min felt the weight of every eye in the chamber upon him. His mind raced through human history, seeing it now through the lens of genetic engineering rather than natural evolution. The constant wars, the rapid technological advancement, The way humans seem to thrive under pressure that would break other species. Their very language reflects their nature, added Councillor So Young. They describe business as warfare. They fight diseases. They battle natural disasters. They conquer mountains and defeat challenges. Violence is woven into their very thought patterns. The chamber erupted in discussions as representatives debated the implications. The Zephyrians, known for their analytical minds, were already running probability calculations. The Molari delegation huddled together, their tentacles intertwining, in a display of collective anxiety. Even the usually stoic Kelvani seemed disturbed by the revelations. Young Hyejin leaned toward Ambassador Dongmin. "Sir, what they're saying, could it be true? Is that why we've always been so good at war? Why we adapt so quickly to threats?" Before Dongmin could answer, his thoughts were interrupted by Councillor So Young's voice cutting through the chaos. "The question before us is simple," she announced, her crystalline form now pulsing orange, the color of determination. "What do we do with a species that was literally designed to be weapons of mass destruction?" Ambassador Dongmin finally rose from his seat. The chamber fell silent as the representative of the species under discussion prepared to speak. His voice was steady, but those who knew him could hear the strain beneath his diplomatic composure. "If this is true," he said, his words carrying clearly through the translation systems, "then what are you proposing?" "Genocide." The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Federation had been founded on principles of peaceful coexistence and mutual respect, but they had never encountered a situation quite like this. "Not genocide," Councillor So Young replied, though her pulsing colors suggested she wasn't entirely certain. "Quarantine, for the safety of the galaxy. Your species would be restricted to your home system. No further expansion, no contact with other civilizations." "Isolation," Dongmin said quietly. "You want to lock us away like dangerous animals." The debate that followed was intense. Representatives argued about the ethics of punishing an entire species for their genetic heritage. Some pointed out that humans had applied for Federation membership peacefully, following all proper protocols. Others argued that their very nature made them too dangerous to trust. But Admiral Tai Hyun had been sitting quietly in the military observer section, studying data streams that his intelligence officers had been feeding him throughout the session. Finally, he rose and activated his personal communicator. "There's something else," he announced, his tentacles moving in patterns that indicated careful consideration. "Something that doesn't fit the living weapon theory." The chamber's attention shifted to the experienced military commander. Tae-hyun had been monitoring human activities since their first contact with galactic civilization. His analysis would carry significant weight with the Council. "I've been studying recent human conflicts," he continued, calling up his own holographic displays. "Yes, they're incredibly effective warriors. Yes, they adapt quickly and fight with enthusiasm, but look at this." The display showed footage from the recent Vorthan border conflict. Human Marines were providing medical aid to wounded Vorthan soldiers. Human engineers were helping repair damaged civilian infrastructure on contested worlds. Human negotiators were working to establish fair terms for prisoners of war. "They show mercy to defeated enemies," Tae-hyun observed. "They protect civilians, even enemy civilians. They follow rules of engagement that limit unnecessary casualties. These aren't the actions of mindless weapons." He brought up more footage. Humans rescuing survivors from destroyed ships, regardless of species. Human doctors treating alien patients with the same care they gave their own wounded. Human commanders who refused to use certain weapons because they caused excessive civilian casualties. "They're warriors, yes," Tae-hyun concluded, "but they're warriors with conscience. They have moral codes that govern their actions. They're capable of mercy, compassion, and ethical behavior under the most extreme circumstances." Ambassador Dongmin felt a surge of hope as he watched the footage. "We may have been designed for war," he said, addressing the Council directly. "But we choose how to wage it. We've developed laws of warfare, codes of conduct, rules to protect the innocent. If we're weapons that have learned to choose our targets carefully. The chamber fell into contemplative silence. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans were indeed the product of genetic engineering designed to create the ultimate warriors. But they were also clearly more than just biological weapons. They had developed culture, art, philosophy, and moral systems that governed their actions. Counselor So Young's crystalline form flickered through several colors before settling on deep blue, the color of uncertainty. "The question remains," she said finally, "what do we do with this knowledge?" Before anyone could answer, an aide rushed into the chamber carrying an urgent message pad. The look on his face suggested that whatever news he brought would change everything once again. "Counselors," he announced breathlessly, "long-range sensors have detected massive objects at the galaxy's edge. They're moving toward inhabited systems, and they match the descriptions from the architect records." The chamber went dead silent. After 3 million years, the Devourers had returned. The Federation's secret plan was put into motion 3 weeks after the Council session. Deep in the classified archives of Federation intelligence, Admiral Tae-hyun met with a select group of military analysts and xenopsychologists. The room was shielded from all electronic surveillance, and only the most trusted officers were present. I need to know what we're dealing with," Tae-hyun addressed the group. His tentacles coiled tightly around his command chair. "The architect records suggest humans are living weapons, but their diplomatic behavior contradicts this. We need to see them under extreme pressure." Commander Yoon Seo, his chief tactical officer, pulled up a holographic star map. "The Korthak Empire has been pushing territorial boundaries for months. Their aggressive expansion threatens 3 Federation protectorates. If we could somehow escalate their current border dispute with human colonies, we wouldn't be creating a war," added Dr. Kira, the expedition's xenopsychologist. "We'd be observing one that's already brewing. The Korthaks have already made threatening moves toward human settlements in the Kepler 186 system. The plan was carefully orchestrated. Federation ships would mysteriously experience communication failures just as Korthak forces began their assault on human colonies. Help would arrive too late to prevent the conflict, but just in time to observe humanity's response to total war." Colonel Wu Jin received the emergency transmission at 0347 hours, ship time. His battle-scarred face showed no emotion as he reviewed the incoming data streams. The Korthak Empire had launched a full-scale invasion of 3 human colonies with over 1 million troops supported by their most advanced warships. "Sir," his aide, Lieutenant Boram, approached with additional intelligence reports. "The Korthak fleet includes 12 dreadnoughts, 47 cruisers, and over 200 fighter craft. They are using their new plasma cannon technology." Wu Jin studied the tactical displays. His available forces consisted of 50,000 ground troops, 32 ships of various classes, and limited heavy weaponry. By every military calculation, this was an impossible fight. "Interesting odds," he murmured, and Lieutenant Boram was surprised to see a slight smile cross his commander's face. "Signal all units. We're going to show these Korthaks how humans fight." Hidden Federation observers positioned themselves throughout the star system, their stealth ships maintaining careful distance while recording everything. Admiral Tae-hyun personally oversaw the operation from the command vessel Concordia, his tentacles writhing with anticipation. "Human fleet is moving into position," reported his sensor officer. "They're not forming traditional battle lines." The human response was unlike anything in Federation military doctrine. Instead of massing their forces for a direct assault, they scattered into dozens of small groups. Each unit seemed to operate independently, yet their movements showed clear coordination. "Psychological operations initiated," reported Lieutenant Boram from her stealth ship to Shadowhunter. Her vessel had been equipped with the most advanced electronic warfare systems humanity had developed. Beginning information warfare protocols. The first phase of the human counterattack wasn't physical, it was mental. Human broadcasts flooded Korthak communication channels, but these weren't random jamming signals. They were precisely crafted messages designed to exploit known weaknesses in Korthak psychology. "Your commanders are lying to you," the messages proclaimed in perfect Korthak. Language. "They promise glory, but they're sending you to die while they stay safe on their flagships. The humans have already destroyed the 7th Fleet. Your reinforcements aren't coming. The information was carefully mixed with truth and lies. Some Korthak units had indeed been destroyed, but the reports were exaggerated. Human intelligence had studied Korthak military structure for months, identifying the species' tendency toward paranoia and mistrust of authority. Korthak formations are showing signs of hesitation, reported the Federation observers. Several units are requesting confirmation of orders from their command ships. Captain Sung-ho led the Falcon Squadron into the heart of the Korthak fleet. His fighter craft were outnumbered 20-1, but they didn't engage the enemy directly. Instead, they struck with surgical precision at specific targets that Federation analysts had never considered important. Supply ships destroyed, Sung-ho reported over the comm. Moving to secondary targets, the human fighters danced through the enemy formation like deadly spirits. They hit fuel depots, communication relays, and command centers. Each strike was calculated to create maximum confusion while avoiding direct confrontation with superior numbers. They're not fighting like warriors, observed Dr. Kira from her position aboard the Federation observation ship. They're fighting like surgeons. Every move is precise, calculated, designed to achieve maximum effect with minimum risk. The Korthak Admiral Vexthor had commanded fleets for over 30 years. He had conquered 6-star systems and never lost a major engagement. But as he watched his forces being systematically dismantled, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "They're using our own battle formations against us," he screamed at his tactical officers. "How do they know our tactics better than we do?" The answer lay in humanity's greatest weapon: their ability to learn and adapt. Human intelligence had been studying Federation military databases for months, absorbing tactical knowledge from hundreds of different species. They had identified patterns and weaknesses that even the species themselves didn't recognize. "Korthak command structure is collapsing," reported Lieutenant Boram. "Their units are operating independently now. Recommend Phase 3 implementation." Phase 3 was the final assault. With Korthak forces scattered and demoralized, human ground troops launched coordinated strikes on key installations. But even here their approach was methodical rather than brutal. "Civilian evacuation routes have been secured," reported Major Haiwan from the surface of Kepler 186c. "Enemy military installations are being neutralized with minimum collateral damage." The Federation observers watched in fascination as human forces systematically defeated an enemy that outnumbered them 20-1. But what disturbed them most wasn't the victory. It was what happened afterward. General Yan Wu, the overall human commander, personally visited the prisoner of war camps. He ensured that captured Korthak soldiers received proper medical treatment, food and shelter, according to galactic conventions. When several Korthak officers expected execution, they were instead offered repatriation negotiations. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Kira reported to Admiral Tae-hyun. "They're treating defeated enemies with respect and dignity. Their medical teams are even treating wounded Korthak civilians." Major Haiwan organized relief efforts for the affected planets. Human engineers worked alongside Korthak civilians to repair damaged infrastructure. Food distribution centers were established without regard to species. Children who had been orphaned by the conflict were placed in care facilities that served both human and Korthak youngsters. "They're not just winning the war," observed Commander Yun Seo, "they're winning the peace." The conflict that military analysts had predicted would last months was over in 18 days. The Korthak Empire formally surrendered, but the terms offered by humanity were surprisingly generous. Captured territory was returned, prisoners were repatriated, and reparations were limited to actual damages rather than punitive measures. Admiral Tae-hyun reviewed the final reports in his private quarters. The data was clear. Humans were indeed engineered for warfare. Their tactical abilities, adaptability, and combat effectiveness exceeded anything in Federation records, but they were also something the architects had never planned for. "They win wars," he dictated to his personal log, "but they don't lose their humanity in the process. They show mercy to the defeated, protect the innocent, and seek to minimize suffering even among their enemies. If they are weapons, They are weapons that have learned to choose their targets wisely. The test had revealed humanity's true nature. They were warriors, but they were also healers. They were strategists, but they were also diplomats. They had been designed for destruction, but they had chosen to create. As news of the Korthak conflict spread throughout the galaxy, other species began to view humans with a mixture of respect and wariness. They were clearly formidable opponents, but they were also potential allies who fought with honor and treated enemies with dignity. The Federation Council would need to reconsider their assessment of humanity. The species that had been created as weapons of war had evolved into something far more complex and potentially valuable. But time was running short. The Devourers were approaching, and the galaxy would soon need every ally it could find. The warning came at 1427 Galactic Standard Time. Every sensor station, every deep space monitoring post, every long-range scanning array across 47 Federation worlds suddenly screamed the same terrifying message. At the rim of known space, where the spiral arm faded into the darkness, between galaxies, entire star systems were simply vanishing from existence. Lieutenant Commander Hayuk J was on duty at the Kepler Observatory when the first readings came in. His hands trembled as he verified the data streams, hoping against hope that the sensors were malfunctioning. But the readings were confirmed by stations across the galaxy. "Sir," he called to his commanding officer, his voice barely steady. "The Centauri system, it's gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone like it never existed." Within hours, the reports multiplied. The Vega colonies, 6 billion inhabitants. The mining worlds of the Altair cluster, 17 industrial planets. One by one, entire civilizations were being erased from the universe. The Federation Council convened in emergency session. Representatives who had been debating humanity's membership just weeks ago now faced the return of an enemy their ancestors had only known through ancient records. The Devourers had awakened from their million-year sleep and were feeding once. Again, President Jiho of Earth stood before the assembled delegates, his presence commanding attention despite the chaos surrounding them. Behind him, holographic displays showed the advancing wave of destruction. Star charts that had remained unchanged for thousands of years now showed expanding voids where thriving systems had once existed. "Honored delegates," Jiho began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "3 weeks ago, you debated whether humanity belonged in this galaxy. You questioned our nature, our purpose, our right to exist among peaceful civilizations." The chamber fell silent. Every representative understood the implications. The species they had feared as weapons of war might now be their only hope for survival. "We know what we are now," Jiho continued. "The question is, what will you let us become?" The vote was swift and unanimous. Humanity was granted full Federation membership and given command authority over all military operations against the Devourer threat. Within hours, human battle fleets were mobilizing across inhabited space. Fleet Admiral Min Ho commanded the first human battle group to make contact with the advancing Devourer fleet. His flagship, Indomitable, led 37 vessels toward what sensor readings described as organic ships of impossible size. The largest Devourer vessels were over 50 kilometers long, their bio-hull surfaces pulsing with an alien life that seemed to absorb light itself. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, Commander Yon Seo, "the enemy vessels don't match any known technology. They appear to be living creatures rather than constructed ships." Through the bridge's viewing ports, the human crew got their first glimpse of the ancient enemy. The Devourer ships moved like massive sea creatures through the void, their tentacle-like appendages reaching out to strip matter from nearby asteroids and debris. They fed constantly, growing larger with each meal. "Bioweapons detected," announced Lieutenant Kang Min from the sensor station. "They're firing some kind of organic projectiles. The projectiles appear to be alive." The first exchange of fire revealed the true horror of Devourer technology. Their weapons weren't energy beams or explosive missiles. They were living creatures designed to burrow into enemy ships and consume them from within. Several Federation vessels were completely devoured in minutes, their hulls converted into biomass for the Devourer fleet. But as the human fleet closed distance, something extraordinary happened. Admiral Minho felt a strange sensation, as if something deep within his DNA was awakening. Around him, his crew moved with a precision and coordination they had never displayed before. "All ships, implement pattern Omega," Minho commanded, though he wasn't entirely sure where the tactical formation had come from. It was as if the knowledge had been sleeping in his mind, waiting for this moment. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, each vessel somehow knowing exactly what the others would do before they did it. They fought like a single organism, but one driven by intelligence rather than instinct. When conventional weapons proved ineffective against Devourer bioarmor, human crews adapted instantly. Captain Dawn's destroyer Lightning had its main guns destroyed in the first exchange of fire, but she didn't retreat. "Bridge to engineering," she commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Set us for ramming speed. We're taking that command ship with us." The Lightning accelerated directly into the heart of a massive Devourer vessel. The impact and explosion tore through the creature's biohull, sending shockwaves through its nervous system. For the first time in the battle, a Devourer ship showed signs of pain. Across the battle line, similar scenes played out. Human crews ejected in escape pods and used their empty ships as guided missiles. Others overloaded their reactors and detonated them inside Devourer feeding chambers. The ancient enemy had never encountered opponents willing to sacrifice everything for victory. Commander Jay Huan's voice rang across the communication channels as his cruiser, Defiant, carved through a formation of smaller Devourer organisms. "Federation fleets, this is how you fight extinction. Follow our lead." The Allied vessels that had been struggling against the bioweapons began to coordinate with human tactics. Zephyrian ships used their superior sensors to identify weak points that human vessels could exploit. Molari commanders coordinated supply runs to keep the human fleet operational. The entire galaxy was learning to fight like humanity. But the real breakthrough came when Colonel Su Jin, commanding the stealth ship Ghost Runner, discovered something crucial about Devourer biology. Her ship had been equipped with experimental scanning equipment designed to penetrate biomatter. "All vessels, this is Ghost Runner," she broadcast on all channels. "I found their weakness. The Devourers operate through a distributed hive mind, but there are central nodes that coordinate the collective consciousness. If we can hit enough nodes simultaneously, we can sever their connection." The plan required perfect timing and absolute sacrifice. Human vessels would have to penetrate deep into the Devourer formation, targeting specific biostructures while under intense fire from the entire enemy fleet. "All human vessels," Su Jin broadcast, "Convergence Point Alpha. We end." This here. What followed was the most devastating assault in galactic history. Thousands of human ships dove into the heart of the Devourer fleet, their crews singing ancient war songs as they closed distance. The songs weren't from any human culture. They seemed to come from some deeper memory, programmed into their DNA by the architects millions of years ago. "Remember who made us," Admiral Minho's voice carried across all human communication channels. "Remember why we exist. Today, we fulfill our purpose." The final assault was a symphony of destruction. Human ships coordinated their attacks with inhuman precision, each explosion carefully timed to maximum effect. As the central nodes were destroyed, individual Devourer organisms began to lose coordination. The massive bioships, no longer connected to the hive mind, turned on each other in confusion. Captain Da-Yun's sacrifice had started a chain reaction. Her destroyer's explosion had damaged the primary control node of the largest Devourer vessel. As more human ships followed her example, the enemy's collective intelligence began to fragment. The explosions lit up space like a new sun. When the light finally faded, the Devourer fleet was nothing but drifting biomass. The few surviving organisms fled back toward the galactic rim, their collective mind shattered by humanity's impossible victory. In the aftermath, as rescue ships collected survivors and began the long process of rebuilding, the galaxy finally understood what the architects had truly created. They hadn't engineered weapons of mindless destruction. They had created guardians, beings who could wage war when necessary, but choose peace when possible. Ambassador Dongmin stood before the Federation Council weeks later, his dress uniform bearing the scars of battle. Around him, representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy listened in respectful silence. "We are what we were made to be," he said simply. "Warriors, protectors, guardians against the darkness. But we choose to be more. We choose to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm, to protect rather than conquer." The vote for full human membership in the Federation was unanimous. But more than that, humanity was invited to help lead the galaxy into a new age of cooperation and mutual defense. The ancient enemy was gone. Their million-year reign of terror ended by the very weapons the architects had created to stop them. But humanity remained, not as conquerors seeking to dominate the galaxy, but as protectors who had finally found their true purpose. The Devourers would trouble the galaxy no more. And in the years that followed, as humanity helped rebuild the devastated worlds and established new colonies among the stars, the galaxy learned the difference between warriors and monsters. Warriors fought to protect others. Monsters fought only for themselves. Humanity had proven beyond any doubt which they truly were. The end.